preview, we got economists warning the crash of a lifetime is upon us. We're going to talk about what it would take to actually cause that. We're going to roll back, though, first and foremost, Elon Musk stirring the pot with Apple with the recent release of their AI. We're going to talk a little bit about Siri, and then we got to kind of recap the GME Saga. Where do we sit with that? Because there's actually still a lot of short interest in GameStop. Kind of surprised. And that's a conversation you'd appreciate. Damn it, hit that like button. Because there's a lot of things that concern me about Elon Musk as of recent. I mean, there's a lot of debate around AI, all these softwares, ChatGPT, because basically it's patently absurd that Apple isn't smart enough to make their own AI, yet is somehow capable of ensuring that OpenAI will protect your security and privacy. Apple has no clue what's actually going on once they hand your data over to OpenAI. They're selling you down the river. And I got to admit here, for all the years that Siri has been around, I am extremely disappointed that Apple didn't take it more seriously and they were more oriented toward making VR, which I think they're doing a terrible job of their VR headset. I still love Meta. I still think Meta's crushing that game, but it's really intriguing to me because, you know, if Apple integrate OpenAI at the OS level, then Apple devices will be banned at my companies. That is unacceptable security violation. Now, I don't know why he's battering Apple so hard. We know he's kind of competing from that front. It's funny how Google's not even in the conversation anymore, but I always said that, you know, if they do partner with OpenAI and we see ChatGPT take over Siri, there's a good chance that, you know, Google search, a lot of these other search competitors are going to get crushed because, you know, that's the way the world is going right now. And I feel like having a Jarvis, like, you know, from Iron Man kind of sitting around on your desk would be the most valued thing that Apple could possibly ever do. And it just bothers me so much that they never invested into it with the hundreds of billions. Like, I think they're like over $1 trillion in share buybacks almost to this point over the years, and they've never just invested heavily into this stuff, which blows my mind. And visitors will have to check their iPhone devices at the door. Like, he's really beating up Apple. And what really broke my heart, he says, who wants an X iPhone? Now, I think it makes sense that he owns Twitter, X, and it makes sense as a social media thing to have a phone, you know, that kind of pairs with his AI software. But at the same time, you know, everyone was expecting that, you know, Tesla being this leader in robotics and devices, that, you know, they think they would have made an iPhone or their own phone for Tesla. I mean, it would sell out instantly. It also breaks my heart that, you know, Elon's divided between all these companies now, and you can see that his attention is, you know, spared on things that we know would probably do much better under the Tesla brand. But that's the reality right now. I mean, you know, I just feel like there's some concern about lack of innovation when I start seeing this stuff come up on his other other platforms that he owns, as Tesla shareholders aren't seeing the benefit like we once were. But still, let's just take a quick listen to Siri, where she's at today, because I just find this utterly intriguing.
What does the weather look like for tomorrow at Muir Beach? Oh, wait, I meant Muir Woods.
It's a bit of voice correction, you know.
The forecast is calling for clear skies in the morning near Muir Woods National Monument.
Sometimes it takes me a beat to figure out what I actually want to ask Siri, and now it follows right along. Siri also maintains conversational context, so I can follow up and say,
I find it funny that when she says Siri, it doesn't talk back to her, because when I say Siri, my phone lights up. What can I do for you? It's like, I wasn't talking to you. Shut up.
create an event for a hike there tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Hike is scheduled for 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on June 11th.
I didn't have to mention Muir Woods again. Siri understood what I meant when I said there. There are also certain times when you might not want to speak to Siri out loud. What's great is that now, at any time, you have the option to type to Siri.
So this is the same thing Meta's doing, you know, the text to prompt. It's the same competition with Google. I mean, everyone's starting to play this game now, but I just, you know, after watching ChatGPT, that 4 launch, this is just so underwhelming.
With just a double tap at the bottom of the screen, I can quickly and quietly ask Siri to set an alarm. And you can switch between text and voice, communicating in whatever way feels right for the moment. We're also laying the groundwork for some brand new ways that Siri will be able to support you, one of which is its extensive product knowledge. Siri now holds a great deal of information about features and settings, and can answer thousands of questions when you want to know how to do something on your iPhone, iPad, or Mac. Even if you don't know exactly what a feature is called, you can just describe it, and Siri will find the info you're looking for. Like this: how can I write a message now and have it be delivered tomorrow? Siri understood what feature I was referring to, and now...
It's just so underwhelming. It's just like, this is the pivotal moment for this massive upgrade in search and AI and robotics, and eventually ChatGPT, like with Figure AI, is going to be integrated into a lot of these robotics. It's, to some extent, that's what companies are going to be competing for. And I always just felt like Apple should have been the leader in this. They came out with Siri so damn long ago. I think it was like 2010 or 2011 or some crap. Like, and it just bothers me endlessly. But I'd love to know what you think about the Saga here. I mean, they've got a bunch of AI tools that are debatable on how great they are. I think, Apple is just slowly inching their way in. It's just not the progression I think a lot of people wanted to see. Now, what I thought was funny is that we saw Roaring Kitty. He's been sharing some updates here, and a lot of us have been following this Saga for sure. I mean, we all watched that live stream, which I thought was a little underwhelming. The movement I just don't think is the same as it once was. Fighting the hedgies and all that stuff. So I just feel like there's no real thesis as much as there was before about the future, other than they diluted the crap out of shareholders, and it tanked the stock, and it's hard competing with dilution. But they raised $3 billion, so they're gonna have about $3 billion in cash, almost half their market cap value. So the stock, it is getting value just based on the cash position they have. The brick and mortar stores are still operating, they're losing cash. So it's funny that he's posting, "You were once a billionaire." This guy's just kind of become a degenerate gambler. I mean, he could have just rode off in the sunset, invested in the S&P 500, call it a day, and life would have been amazing. But I still think he sees some short interest, and I was surprised he didn't talk about this on the stream either. The short interest, and I imagine this isn't overly updated because it goes back to 5/15/2024. I wish it would update a little bit more recently, just to see. I would be excited to see what the exact short interest is today, but it's crazy how many people are playing against this stock right now. So it'll be one that I watch, still not playing it. Fascinating. And speaking of short interest and crashing, I saw Tom Lee shared this, and he says Harry Dent says a video will crash 98% and the QQQ to crash 92%. I want to know one thing, just one thing, Harry. Does he have any friends? Because friends don't let friends go off far off the rails like this. I wish him well. Yeah. So this economist warns crash of a lifetime is coming. Predicts the S&P 500 to plummet 86% from the top. And I want to explain to you what it would take for this to actually happen, because I believe we're in the greatest value creation of human history right now. We talked about this because it's kind of like Kathy Wood's thesis that, you go back to the steam engine, what it took to the printing press, and it took a long time for all these innovations to kind of compound on themselves. And now the compound of growth is becoming quite exponential here, and it's bleeding into value creation for the market, right? It expands margin. For the first time ever, we're seeing companies that are literally like NVIDIA that have 80% margins almost, like Apple, 30% margins that really just didn't exist before this, because the auto industry was always tight on margin. Most companies leading up to this were because software is just incredible, right? But a lot of this is being driven by GDP, right? We're seeing a huge amount of growth in gross domestic product sales. These countries are growing at unbelievable clips, and this is what would have to stall out to crash the market. And I feel like if you go back to the dot-com bubble, that's when we started seeing absurd price to earnings multiples, and it feels like, with the exception of the 2008 financial crisis, we're living in a time where high multiples are going to persist because margins are high and mega huge companies are growing at double-digit clips. And that demands a higher multiple of the market. So I feel like people are, it's overvalued. It's this. You based on historical value, based on path represents the future, because the past always represents the future. It's not how it works. I mean, just because the past has always, commanded an average price to earning multiple of like 15 doesn't mean that's how it's going to be in the future, because only for the last 20 years have we had such expansion in margin, right? So when it comes to the Q specifically, though, I think, yes, we could see some correction in the individual stocks like NVIDIA, because people think, this pace of growth can persist for the foreseeable future, but it won't. We've seen that with Tesla. We see that with all companies that eventually kind of get into this realm of hype. But right now, the Qs are trading at a price to earnings around 34, which is historically high, even considering the last few years it's been much lower than that. But again, when you look at the companies holding in the Qs, we'll take a look at the top three, like Microsoft, Apple, and NVIDIA. I think Microsoft can command a higher price multiple. They're trading back at double-digit growth rates where they have been post-pandemic level, like they've nominalized, and at the scale that they're growing is insane. So good for them. Apple needs a little bit more growth ahead of them. The revenue stalled out pretty dramatically here. The only growth is share buybacks, increasing, their price or their EPS. Otherwise, they've been kind of stalling out, as many companies have been that have been more consumer product oriented and not like software oriented like Microsoft is, which again, being more hardware, but still software oriented. You got Nvidia that's been crushing it, up 265% revenue growth here, which just insane revenue growth, right? But again, you have to imagine that this is unlikely to persist. The law of large numbers will eventually catch up, which I've stated. They're getting down into the quarter over quarter 20 percentile growth, which is insane, but it's nowhere where it was. So like I said, this thing can't be trading at an 80 to 100 times multiple at the level that, I mean, it's a $3 trillion company. If to justify the value today, for you to even justify it, it has to become a $7 to $10 trillion company. And it can get there in the next couple of years. I'm not saying it can't, but it's just highly unlikely. And I don't know enough about it to believe that's going to come into fruition, because competition is coming into play. A lot of people don't think competition's coming, but when you're selling drug dealer like margins and you see every tech company introducing their own AI chips to help keep up with their demand, that's going to stifle a little bit of the growth here as well. Not that it'll completely kill it, but again, we're going to start seeing a leveling off here at some point. So like I said, I'm not as bearish on the overall market. I'll keep cost averaging. I think the markets are a bit expensive today, but unless something catastrophic happens from a GDP standpoint, unless the housing market collapses and the end consumer gets screwed and you start seeing banks default or something, I can't see an 80% crash. It just doesn't make sense. We've come so far since 2008, and to kind of revert all that value and say it's done, again, it seems a bit crazy to me, but that's hearsay. It's anybody's opinion. Nobody knows what the future brings, but I'll pass it off to you as always. I'd love to know what you think in that comment section below.